You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho and Ashley Hardgrave. All right, this week, as the team gears up for OBS Season 11, we bring you some of the best of Season 10, starting with a free throw from Sondra Radvanovsky on singing one of her quote-unquote easiest roles. Then it's George's pick for his favorite interview of 2025. We go inside the huddle with stage director, author, and Detroit Opera artistic director Yuval Sharon. And to round out this all replays episode, we revisit our conversation with tenor Jordan Pitts, the creator of drag diva Creatine Price. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. And would you look at that, folks? It's just me in a recording booth by myself, completely blissfully ignorant of any happenings in the world of tennis. Unfortunately, Bama football is really getting to me. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Next month, Lyric Opera of Chicago opens their season with a David McVicker production of Medea, starring friends of the show Matthew Polenzani, Elena Vialon, and the inimitable Sondra Radvanovsky. We caught up with Sondra earlier this year as she was preparing to sing an all-Puccini concert at Lyric Opera.
Sondra Radvanovsky returns to Lyric Opera of Chicago for another one of her incredible feats. Just a few years ago, she sang the Donizetti Three Tudor Queens finales in concert. And after having already sung roles like Lady Macbeth and Norma and Amelia and a Mass Ball, she only does hard things. She is coming to Chicago to sing an aria from every Puccini opera. I guess that's 14 arias. And I can confirm that she will conclude with In Questa Regia.
Something light for the finale.
Just a nice stroll.
Of course, along the way, we will get Visi d'Arte. So why not, before we hear this free throw on the role of Turandot, a little bit of Sondra's Tosca. Sondra, welcome to Opera Box Score. We just recorded an interview for my other job, and I have a couple minutes to hang out with you. You are in a run of Tosca right now that has been really well received by the New York audiences. It's sold out. I don't know what the last sold out show at the Metropolitan Opera was. Maybe Fire Shut Up in My Bones, like right after the pandemic or something.
Medea.
Oh, that was also you. Nice. And I know something about Medea that I can't say yet, but very exciting opera.
Yes, coming soon to a theater near you.
So you're in your like Puccini era, and I was trying to set up my WFMT interview to talk about your Bel Canto Bona Fides. And you approach repertoire so much with, this technical expertise. And you said something so mind-blowing to me that Turandot is easy for you.
Yep. Honestly, I love singing her. I think it's written so beautifully for the voice. And the way that he got the character into the high notes. She doesn't start out right away with all the pounding these high notes. Yeah. In Questa Regia, the aria is really kind of very lyric. And it's a great setup then for the riddles and then the last scene. For me, vocally, it's perfect.
It's like all that recitation in the beginning is like a warm-up for you.
Yes, it really is, because it sits at, it sits in a very nice place. It's not too high, it's not too low. Great.
So I don't know how many times you've sung it yet, but have you worked out a signal with the tenor so that they can let you know, okay, I got to get off this note now?
How many times have I sung? I think I've done it 4 times now.
Okay.
Going to do my 5th in London in March and April. But you kind of feel it. You can feel when a tenor is ready to get off the note, or if he's really feeling good with it, or when I have to get off of it. And I've been fortunate to do it with some great tenors, Jonas Kaufmann, Yusuf, Piotr Bachawa. I mean, very lucky. Brian Jade, really lucky. So they're all great musicians, but night to night it changes. That's the beauty of live opera.
Yeah. You heard the stories of, I don't know, Franco Corelli, like, was it biting Birgit Nilsson's ear or something like that? Like there was something where like they were doing a Turandot and they were getting into like a war with each other about who could hold it longer.
Yeah, well, I always believe I'm very fortunate. I love all my colleagues. I think we're all very supportive of each other. I'm sure back in the day, people were allowed to be a bit more diva or divo. Yeah. But truly, one of my favorite singers in the whole business, besides Bryn Terfel, is Piotr Bachawa. And he would never, ever do that to me, and I would never, ever do that to him. And I think it's all about us lifting each other up and making a great ensemble. But that said, there have been moments in the earlier part of my career where you just want to smack somebody in the head and sing louder than them and sing longer. But it's not good.
Well, speaking about like this era that we're in of like just being more supportive and also the media landscape that we're in, I do want to talk about your podcast, Screaming Divas, because I think people would be surprised to know like how down to earth you are and how open you are about the career and about the craft. And it's definitely very different than, the mysterious XYZ singer from, the golden age,
Right. Well, this is 2025. And I really feel that opera needs to be de-stuffified. We need to show people that opera is actually cool and interesting, and that all modern opera, it all came from the same place. Music came from the same place. Let's be real here. We had opera first, before we had pop, before we had country, before we had blues, before we had jazz. We had opera. And I think that my goal, and Carrie Alkema, my counterpart in Screaming Divas, is really to inform people and to make opera less boring. I mean, opera is not boring. Opera is exciting. I mean, you get a good production with good singers, and it's thrilling, isn't it? And that's what Carrie and I want to do. We want to show people that all these opera singers that we talk to, how much work it is, how hard it is, and how fun it is, and that we're just normal people who put our pants on the exact same way everyone else does.
And how athletic it is. And I said this in the formal interview, but you are doing things that put you in demand for only the most difficult roles. It's like, now, you sing Norma now, so you have to sing Norma. Now you have contracts, I'm sure, like in the future to sing Norma. And that is, that's not an easy thing. I don't know how many you can do in your life before you're like, okay, I got to stop. That's like enough of that.
Well, funny. I'm talking to you right now with bruised ribs because of an accident on stage that happened with the Tosca. So, it's difficult what we do, and trying to sing, let alone putting our brain, which is such a big part of what we do as a singer, our brain is involved in our whole vocal production. And if you're having a bad day, or if you've just, like me, gone through a divorce and had some really crappy days, and then you have to walk on stage and become someone else and put all of that aside, even though your body is super tight from all the screaming and yelling you just done. It's hard. It's really hard because you feel like a person with two different personalities. And that's what Carrie and I are trying to do with the Screaming Divas, is create awareness and lifting that veil of mysteriousness, I think, that's been shrouded around opera. It's music, and it's cool music. And we want people to listen to opera and keep coming to opera because it's amazing, beautiful music. And Carrie and I are going to be putting together some exciting concerts in the next year, which we hope everybody's going to come and listen to.
Cherubini's Medea, starring Sondra Radvanovsky, is on stage at Lyric Opera of Chicago October 11th through 26th. Our thanks to Michael Solomon at Lyric for coordinating this interview recorded in January. Hey, well, I've got you. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. We've got another one for you. Yuval Sharon, author of A New Philosophy of Opera, presented his concept for Così fan tutte at Detroit Opera last April. Sharon's fresh take on Mozart's controversial comedy turned the tale into a futuristic artificial intelligence experiment and asked the larger question of what it means to be human. This Inside the Huddle was one of George Cedarquist's favorites of OBS Season 10, and since he pays the bills, we're thrilled to bring you once again a conversation all about Così.
We're going to talk about the Così that's coming up in Detroit, but just in case the audience doesn't remember, one of your trademarks, I guess what we might say, is your reimagination of canonical works in one occasion as a COVID restriction kind of contingency. But even post-COVID, this backward bohème is something that I think got your name out there. Can you just talk about why we need to necessarily reimagine canonical works for contemporary audiences?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I really do believe that the operatic repertoire is much more flexible and generative and open than we sometimes give it credit for. We can often kind of fall in a trap of feeling like we already know what these works are all about. And so to do this, we have to do that. If we're going to do Mozart, it has to look this way, it has to sound this way, it has to have all of these things that are actually, in many cases, don't have much to do with the work anymore, but have to do with its many, many generations of received tradition, some of which is really useful. I mean, we don't need to throw out everything from the past, but I think we should always be questioning, well, why do we make the choices that we do when we perform a Mozart opera or a Puccini opera or a Monteverdi opera? And is there another way of doing it? Is there a way in which we, in our present moment, can actually add to this incredible work and make it feel like it's completely of our time as well as of its time? And I think that there is absolutely a place for historic historic reenactments of certain musical ideas. And we also have an incredible archive at our fingertips and our phones on YouTube, on all kinds of places. But to come into a space in 2025, for example, in Detroit, for me, I think the Così fan tutte that we would do in Detroit right now should really feel so of its moment the way it was when Mozart first wrote it. And so I think that trying to connect these ideas and these pieces to what it is that we're thinking about now is really a part of the process.
We're going to get to Così in a second, but just for the sake of argument, is there an opera that is accepted to be in the standard canon, whatever era, that you think is actually the right aesthetic and the right story without tampering with it for 2025?
I mean, let me put it this way. I don't actually think about it as tampering. So I'm going to maybe just question that word first, because that kind of implies that I don't think they work. And so I need to fix it. Mm-hmm. Now, in the case of Così, we might get to that. Like, Così does need our interpretational involvement for it to actually be a meaningful project now. But there are many, many operas in which, you don't have to set them backwards. You don't have to put them on the moon. You don't have to do these things. But we might also learn a lot about these pieces by trying new things with them. For example, saying that, maybe we have even, this is also sometimes on a micro level of we're so used to hearing a certain type of vocal production in relation to a certain type of role. And what does it mean to bring new artists in that bring new colors to the way that we hear these pieces and think about them differently? So I just think that every time we perform something live, we have just as much responsibility to our time than we do to its time. In fact, we don't have that much responsibility to its time anymore. We have every responsibility to our time. And just to put it, to not overstate the case, we did some productions in Detroit Opera that really didn't have, they were very well directed without needing a high concept framework. And that's perfectly fine too. There's not one size fits all with opera. And I would argue that I believe that so much that when I see other opera companies where there aren't these kind of liberties taken and interpretational freedoms given, that I just think surely at least one production during the year can be something in which we maybe learn something new about these pieces, as opposed to maybe just reproducing the things we know.
Well, it's a way of actually, the question was a way of trying to figure out who you are and what is your, what do you agree with without having to think about it? What it's yes, give me whatever Midsummer Night's Dream, the way Britain intended it, or the way Britain imagined it,
Yeah, no. I mean, it's an important part of my process always to try and imagine what composers were doing when they wrote this piece. What were they thinking? What was happening in their moment? But I don't anticipate the audience needing to know that to understand the piece. So the audience that's actually coming to see it is coming from our own world and from our own perspective. And what could I do in staging a piece that can help bring out that, help build that bridge between the audience as it is now and our experience of life right now with what Mozart was thinking, what Puccini was thinking, what any of these composers were thinking. And I actually think that radical choices are worth doing. We should be experimenting. I'll bring Mozart up as a prime example. A lot of people have an image of Mozart as a kind of angelic, cherub figure. There's actually paintings of him almost looking it's like Sistine Chapel style, looking down from heaven, and he's just so perfect. I mean, the music he wrote was so sublime. But I actually really think that what makes Mozart so endearing is the fact that he was such a trickster, and he was always pulling pranks on his audience. And the movie Amadeus is such a great example of this, where you just get to see this rambunctious, wild kid that Salieri's looking at and saying, how could such divine heavenly music come from the perspective of someone who seems such such an animal in so many ways and bucks all of civil trends, And it is something that we sometimes forget with Mozart, that he was like an overturner of conventions as much as he was a standard bearer. And so I keep thinking, like, we want that aspect of Mozart too, like, and we don't often see that when we keep productions in a framework that is familiar to us.
Well, staying on the topic of Mozart, I am a big Mozart guy, and Così is my favorite opera. I've said it many times on this show. And I feel Mozart, pushing against what was expected and really handing the baton over to somebody like Beethoven. Fiordiligi is like the last opera seria character. I mean, he wrote a couple more, but I mean, she's like she's trying really hard to be virtuous. She's trying really hard to hang on to this idea of what opera was, even though all of her surroundings are going comic. Even her sister, who was with her, is going comic, So I feel like it's, in a way, so modern for 1790 or 89 or whenever it was written, Yeah. And I know that it has a lot of, libretto has problems, but I think the story doesn't have a problem. And clearly the music is just genius. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's such great music.
There's some program notes that your PR person sent me to read before talking to you. And I forget, I should credit this person because it was a really great essay. But one of the things that's in this essay is the idea of having to defend Mozart. And that Così is an opera that the real Mozart lovers, the people who are so devoted to Mozart, find themselves defending, almost in the way Fiordiligi is defending her opera seria, bona fides, So with that as a starting point, what does Così mean to you? And what, I understand, we're going to get into this idea of the characters are puppets, but do you love Così as an opera for its own sake?
Yeah, I love Così as an opera so much. And then there are the challenges with Così that just feel like, as a stage director, it's really exciting to think, well, how can we solve some of these challenges? And it's what I love about opera is it's never stationary. It is actually incredibly flexible and always open. And I think there's a lot of possibilities. My interpretation that's going to open a Detroit Opera is one of those possibilities. It's not the only one. And it may not be, knowing you're a Così fan, and I don't know if you're actually going to be able to come see this or not, but, this may not be the solutions for the piece that you might endorse, but for other people, it may be a way in that they might otherwise be that might otherwise feel closed off to them. I can talk about all the things that I love about it. The primary thing being, it's such a deep investigation about subjectivity and free will, and this notion of what makes us special. Are we even special at all? And I think we have to, when I hear Così, I really think about the fact that this is the end of a trio that he wrote with De Ponte that began with Marriage of Figaro, which is so humanistic and so warm and so truly a believer in humankind. That humankind ultimately is about forgiveness, is about grace, is about the equality of all of the classes, where the countess and a servant can sing a duet together like two sisters. There's so much that's just utopian and positive in Marriage of Figaro, which lines up really well with kind of the promise of the French Revolution, which was kind of brewing at this point, right? Then we have Don Giovanni, and we have a much darker look at humanity, but it's not fully dark yet. We have this notion that the individual freedom that the French Revolution was expressing has a dark side, has a shadow, and that maybe our society isn't quite ready for that shadow to be unleashed on the world, as Don Giovanni sort of represents. You may remember one of the great moments in Don Giovanni is when he is forcing everyone to sing Viva la Libertà, Viva la Libertà. It's the least free music that Mozart ever wrote, is this absolutely just authoritarian, crushing sense of freedom, 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 freedom. And it's freedom for who? Freedom for this one guy, not freedom for anybody else. So we're already starting to get this kind of look that maybe this utopia that we were promised, maybe there is this darker side to it. Then you get to Così, and now it's actually an existential crisis where we just get this feeling of we don't quite know what the future holds. And we have a character like Despina saying something like, we are going to just forget the past because the past doesn't help us anymore. and there is something very powerful and disruptive in Così, even though on the surface, it's kind of a comedy of errors type story of mismatched lovers and one's, seducing the other and trying to fool the other and disguises and all of these kind of tropes of comedy, which I think is actually really beautifully put, Oliver, that Fiordiligi is the one opera seria character who's trying to hold on to something meaningful, but like this notion of all of our traditional values are rapidly deteriorating around these characters, and Fiordiligi's like our last hope, And she may succumb, but even though she succumbs, there's something about the way that she nevertheless has this interiority and this deep feeling that Mozart gave her that nevertheless gives us a sense in a faith in humanity. And so
she still has shame. She's the only one that has shame.
Oh, absolutely. She's ashamed even at the thought of it. Before she sings her great aria Per Pietà, she has not cheated on her lover, but she just thinks that even the thought of cheating on her lover is something that is below her worth. And it's there's a way of saying like, well, she's somebody who's really by her surroundings, but she's almost more like how Nietzsche would call it, that she loves her fate, she loves her destiny, and she is fully embodied in her destiny. And actually, she is the great character in the opera for sure.
So
anyway, there's a lot to talk about here.
Can we take the idea of destiny and carry it over to your concept for the Detroit opera production?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Is free will, and the notion of, do these characters have free will at all? Probably the thing that people have the biggest issue with Così, it's not the music, but two big topics. One is a kind of blatant misogyny as expressed by Don Alfonso, the kind of patriarchal head of the entire opera. That's one thing that you must grapple with if we're doing the opera in 2025. And not relativize it and not say, oh, well, you had to be there. Like if you were in Mozart's time, this would have been a little saucy, but it's okay. But we're just going to keep doing it not critically. I can't imagine that being a viable path for this opera. So you have to address the misogyny. And the other thing is what I hear from a lot of people saying, but the four lovers are such cookie cutter characters. They're just almost like archetypes. Other than Fiordiligi gains individuality over the course of the opera, but she doesn't start with Per Pietà. She starts singing in these quite frankly robotic, parallel lines with her sister, in which the two of them at the beginning are completely interchangeable. And, Mozart obviously could have done this very differently, but instead he makes them just feel like they are these two malleable, new creations, and actually the men don't do much better, to be totally honest. The two male lovers, don't do much better too. They often also sing in this kind of lockstep that when that he's already done Don Giovanni and Marriage of Figaro, Mozart it's not an accident. He's choosing to make them very artificial seeming. And, if you're thinking about Fiordiligi's great aria Per Pietà, you can compare it to her first act aria, Come Scoglio, which actually does have it's quite literal. There's a rigidity about this character, when she's first singing.
It's a Handel aria, actually. There's a Handel aria that has almost the same text. It's oh, okay, this is where Mozart is getting this, So.
Yes, well, and Per Pietà as well. Per Pietà is also, it's something that also comes up. These characters don't speak from a place of originality, funny enough. They're always invoking things that seem so far beyond them. They're talking about Greek mythology. They're comparing themselves to famous lovers in the Odyssey or to the Oresteia. There's this feeling that they are puppets and that they are a kind of manipulation of Alfonso. And actually, that's how the whole opera is set up. It's the subtitle is A School for Lovers. So we decided for our production, we're going to take that a step further. We're going to make it the laboratory for lovers, in which we have these young lovers that are the machines that Don Alfonso is making and is testing, and to see at what point, if he pushes their buttons hard enough, at what point do they break? And is it possible that they've created an operating model that's so good that it can withstand the pressure? Or are they stuck to replicate the behavior of everyone that preceded them? And so there, in many ways, making sense of this story is very natural when we think about it in relation to artificial intelligence. And I have the feeling we don't have enough time for me to go into all the details about it, but the notion that Mozart, especially in Così, is exploring what, like, if we as individual subjects might in fact actually be the manipulated automaton of some higher power, and maybe that higher power is not benevolent. It may be that higher power that's trying to manipulate us is doing it just for a kind of cynical, dark, misanthropic view of what humanity is all about, which in our case is Don Alfonso. Why is he setting up this experiment? What is it for? It got to be, he's got to have some reason, which Mozart leaves completely opaque. There is absolutely no, where Fiordiligi has so much interiority, Don Alfonso, who's the engine of the whole piece, has zero. And so it makes him the most interesting character of the entire opera. And we've developed him quite a bit for our production.
Detroit Opera's new season begins in December with a double bill of William Grant Still's Highway 1 and Kurt Weill's Down in the Valley, starring friend of the show, Nicole Heaston, conducted by friend of the show, Roberto Kalb. Our thanks to the PR team at Detroit Opera for connecting us with Yuval Sharon back in March. Hey, if you're still listening, make sure you spread the word about Opera Box Score. Find a friend who's into opera or sports, I guess, and drag them kicking and screaming over to the download button. And make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Opera Box Score is always interested in finding the unique stories of opera creators and their unique paths to finding their voice and finding their audience. Perhaps no creator this season has had a more unique story than tenor Jordan Pitts, who went inside the huddle back in January.
Jordan Pitts, welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
We are delighted to have you. Okay, so we're going to kick this off. We don't usually go as far back as like formative years with our guests, but I think we've got to talk about your training as an opera singer. We've got to talk about the creation of Creatine Price and how those performance skills like came together. So walk us through that.
Yeah, it's a long story. It's a really, really long story, but essentially I've trained as a baritone for many years, like everybody had a passion for musical theater in the beginning. And yeah, exactly. I fell on opera kind of just by accident, in high school. I didn't really find that, musical theater was fitting all of my needs. I had a very loud and annoying voice.
Oh my God, me too.
Oh my God. Yes, all of us. So everybody was like, maybe you should try something else. And, I was the lead in all the musicals in high school. And so I wanted to be a star. I wanted to be a diva. But when I discovered opera, I was in high school. I went to go see Carmen at SUNY Fredonia, which is near Buffalo, where I'm from. And it was the first opera I'd ever seen, but it was also like a conglomerate of all the things that I was good at, right? I've always been really good at languages. I've always been really good at theory and being a musician sort of in a technical sense. And decided that, wow, this is everything I've wanted to do. And I auditioned for a bunch of different places and didn't get in. Fredonia was the only place I got in. And I just ran with it, I had some sort of issues really breaking into the young artist scene just because I didn't really have I wouldn't say I had bad instruction. I just didn't really have like a natural facility around being a singer. And I really struggled with that well into my early 20s, even through grad school. And to make a very long story short, I always tried to do different things. I always knew that the traditional sense of a career was going to sort of evade me because I had so much catching up to do. And also, I just had all this passionate energy inside of me that I wanted to put into something special. And I never knew what that was, but it was under development for many, many years, you know? It was just like, that sixth sense you have about yourself sometimes where you're just like,
Yeah.
I know I'm destined for something, but I also know that like this, whatever the this is kind of maybe not for me.
Yeah.
And it's weird because now that I don't, sort of on a separate note, now that I don't specifically have like a traditional opera career, now more like traditional things are finding me. It's really weird and counterintuitive. But anyways, to pay my bills and to get through living in New York City in my 20s, I had to start working in nightlife. I was a go-go dancer. I was all kinds of things in all the clubs. And I happened upon drag, and I had a friend from college who did drag, and I always thought like, gosh, that would be a lot. I don't know if I'm really made for that. But yeah, I just started doing it kind of randomly when I was like 27, 26, 27. And I just developed a passion for it. And my first, like my principal artist debut, in 2019 was with New York City Opera in an opera called Stonewall, singing a role written for a drag queen, named Renata. It was an opera by Ian Bell, wonderful, fabulous British composer.
Friend of the show. One of our original interview guests when this podcast first started in 20 whenever. He was one of our very first guests. And Mark Campbell's been a guest as well. So
I did know that. I knew Mark had been on here. I did not know Ian had been on here. That's amazing. Ian is I'm firmly, squarely House of Bell.
Okay.
my formative years in drag are House of Bell, hashtag House of Bell. So yeah, I just kind of like did a deep dive into it after that because I loved it. I loved the combination of singing the way I normally do and bringing in all those things that we do as singers to really heighten our craft and bring something that's very high quality. We talked about the sort of level of coming in like gymnastics, right? That sense of like, there's really high stakes here. That plus drag was just so thrilling. So I developed a drag persona formerly known as Petty Yende.
They're both so good.
Thank you. Formerly known as Petty Yende. That's a whole other bag of worms. That blew up in my face a few years later. So, but I worked as Petty Yende for many years, and then after this situation, I developed the idea for Creatine Price to kind of be that plus.
Right.
It's like, now I've sort of had fun at, Petty Yende was more like I did twirl and lip sync and did all those things. But gosh, like Creatine Price for me was a birthing of singing all the repertoire that I've always loved and wanted to sing and trying to bring my technique up to the level to meet it.
Right.
And luckily I have a teacher that is so game for all of that. And it's weird and it's crazy. And that's kind of like the story. I don't know what else to say.
That's a heck of a story.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I just am curious about your own musical taste because just from the stuff that I've seen, you're not giving your audience like the hits. You're not giving them like, okay, here's O mio babbino caro. It's like you're actually asking them to hear things that even like people who like opera don't know so well.
Yeah. No, that's totally my MO, Oliver. Like that's my MO. That's my mission in a way, because I'm tired of hearing the hits, the way that a lot of people sing them constantly. I mean, yes, I do love, the hits, but for me, I think my tastes boil down to what brings the drama and what brings a level of intellectualism to drag, the element of drag as well, that I think is a little bit different, you know? And for me, I try to perform things that I feel connected to, right? So like I've sang this Adriana aria, not just the Cerba Voluta, but the soprano aria all the time because I just felt connected to it. I felt like when I was singing it, like I felt like diva when I was singing it. And it just, I don't know, it just comes from that. I have no desire to sort of fit what other people want to hear. I want to bring out what I love. And I hope that reaches people and touches people. And right now it is. So that's kind of wild to me. Like, even if nothing had ever happened in my career, I would still have just been happy getting up and singing the stuff that I sing.
Do you feel like for some of these audiences who are probably not even interested in opera, the majority of them, that you need to contextualize what Adriana Lecouvreur even is?
Yeah, and I do sometimes. Sometimes I don't. And I think the beauty of it is that a lot of people can appreciate what it is without knowing necessarily the context. You know, they can hear that and they'd be like, oh my gosh, that's like a big high note, or, you know, this is supposed to be maybe more like intense and quiet, and people can tune in. Like we don't give people enough credit sometimes to really read what's happening in a performance. There are a lot of people that just don't get it, and I'm fine with that. Like, totally fine with that. But I do provide context, and my show that I've developed over the last year and a half, which is now housed at Red Eye here in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. It's called Cantata. Formerly it was called Cantata with a U. But I decided to go with Cantata because it was a little bit more PC, and I just feel like opera audiences are a little bit more like, okay, like we'll go to that. Every time I bring it to Fire Island, it is still Cantata.
Oh, yeah. But this one you can list in the paper. Yeah.
This one I can list in the paper. So Cantata is, for me, a safe space for music education. It starts in a direction of music education and ends in the world of drag. It's sort of like that journey. And it's been a hit. I don't know how, but it's been an absolute hit. It's what birthed Creatine Price, really, in the sense that I know her now, and things like Drag Messiah, which I'm sure we'll get to. But
we will talk about Drag Messiah in 1 second. But I just don't know if you're following sort of the I should not even say counter, the male soprano revolution that's happening in Europe right now with artists like Bruno de Sa and Mayan Licht, and how there's this what's his name, Max Cencic, who has this company that's doing operas that are just chock full of countertenors, and some of them in drag, you know, and you know you're singing in your modal voice, but clearly your ethos is in line with that type of work, which is not happening in the US yet. Are you going to be the person to create the male, whatever, you're a tenor, you know, like the drag tenor, countertenor, or, you know, drag opera, you know?
I would hope so. I think that's kind of my long-term goal is to bring that about. I'm still figuring it out. I think for me, like I said, it comes down to like what I feel connected to. And I think bringing, my modal voice into it is what I do best, and is what I feel most secure in. I think doing drag and then singing in a countertenor voice has its place, of course, like it's amazing, but I just don't, I want to be bringing my technique to the level of singing the arias that are not written for my voice type, because it's a point I'm trying to prove, you know what I mean? That like the gendering of the voice, makes sense in some ways and doesn't in a lot of others, you know? I think a lot of people don't feel, I'm sure, you know, you guys can attest to this. Sometimes we don't feel aligned with the rep that is given to us.
Yep.
So speaking of the rep that is given to us, so I am a Baroque tenor, and so Messiah is my thing. So tell us about Creatine Price's Messiah.
The Drag Messiah came about randomly. I had a spot to fill in one of the cantatas. I think it was in maybe May or June. And I was thinking of, you know, people to invite. I had a friend suggest a fabulous queen in Boston named Tilda Watersclear. Tilda Watersclear, like the water is now running clear.
I'm deeply in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a trombonist. phenomenal musician. I heard that instantly when I looked at her Instagram and saw her videos on YouTube, and I thought to myself, like, gosh, this is a great opportunity to do not the trumpet shell sound, but the trombone shell sound, which I know that you guys reported on when it happened for the first time.
That is how I learned about you and said, I have to tell everyone I know about this.
You're so sweet. Yeah, it just happened. I was like, gosh, could you think you could do this? And Tilda was like, yeah, I mean, it's just like an octave down and it sounds this way. And she sent a clip of her playing it. And I was like, oh my God, like we need to do this. I mean, super fun. So yeah, I just posted it online. I mean, the show went really well and I posted it online and it went mega viral. It had like, I think in total 2 million views across both platforms. And still counting, to this day. I think it's one of my most watched videos on my TikTok and on my Instagram. And yeah, then everybody in the comments was just asking if this was a full show. So I said, gosh, why not extend cantata and the world that is cantata to Drag Messiah and make Drag Messiah a thing. Didn't know how it was going to go, and to this day, it is my most sold out show. I mean, yeah.
The trombone shall sound, the dead shall be raised, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible. The trombone shall sound.
So, Jordan, how do you see Creatine, or do you see Creatine fitting into the opera industry at large? Is this, I'm just going to keep making my own stuff, or are you going to try to like put her in different places and spaces?
Yeah, I would love to have Creatine show up in different roles. Obviously there's maybe a smaller pool of roles that might be appropriate for at this point in time in opera. I would love to get to the point where that might not be the case, but I'm not exactly sure what that looks like for me. I know that what's great about Creatine is that it keeps me creative, keeps me creating, and keeps me putting out stuff that just makes me feel whole as an artist and makes me connect with people that are like-minded. I think, and right now we're in a position in opera where maybe it doesn't fit in, and that's okay. I'm just going to try to keep knocking that wall down.
Would you audition as Creatine or would you audition as Jordan?
I've done both at this point. So I think a lot of people are more interested in hearing me audition for tenor roles at this moment, just from what my agent tells me. But, Creatine for me is a long-term project. So the possibilities are kind of endless at this point for me.
Well, how would you characterize your interactions with the so-called legacy audiences, 60 plus?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, guys. It's a mixed bag. Obviously, I was just on television. I was just on national television in France on La France en Incroyable Talent, France's Got Talent. And that brought Creatine Price to a lot of different eyes and ears. And from what I've looked at, it's been pretty difficult, honestly, if I'm honest. Yeah. It's been a very, very difficult thing for me to deal with, being in the public eye in a way of like a traditional opera audience. There are people that absolutely love to see what I'm doing because it sort of pokes fun at the fact that like drag is already in opera, like opera is already.
Yeah, she's already there. Mm-hmm.
She's already there. I mean, like what Netrebko does on stage, what Nadine Sierra does on stage, it is high drag. Yes, 100%. And so some people get that right away, but the majority of people I would say that are, let's say 60 plus or in the legacy era, as we're so politely calling them, don't fully get it. And there's been a very vehemently negative reaction to a lot of it.
In France or here in the US?
Both, but I think being on French TV, especially, it was really, really negative a lot of the time.
Oh no.
I hate that.
Can you tell us about the whole France's Got Talent story and the good parts of it too?
The good parts, I mean, it's full. The thing is, like, it is a good thing. It's not, I think the crash out of dealing with comment sections and all that stuff has come after for me because I was so focused on just doing it and getting through it because I didn't expect to advance at all. But the story is a bit strange. I posted a few videos. This is back in the Petty Ende days of me singing in drag, and I happened to come across Marianne James. Marianne James is one of the judges on the show, and she added me on Instagram and started messaging me right away and was very, sort of motherly to me and was like, oh gosh, your voice and everything that you do is just absolutely wonderful. Would you like to be on this show? And I said, yes, of course, an opportunity is an opportunity. Why not? And nothing ever happened. I didn't really hear about it for a while. I didn't expect, anything to come out of it. I just thought like, okay, maybe that conversation's done. So whatever. Years later, post-pandemic, posted some other stuff. She shared it. And then the producers reached out to me and they were like, hey, are you friends with Marianne James? I was like, I mean, yeah, like, we've been connected for many years at this point. Yeah. So they asked me to come on the show and surprise her. So originally it was just supposed to be sort of a guest artist. I come and surprise her kind of thing. But I did so well in that audition, quotation mark, audition episode that they asked me to come back for the quarterfinals and really compete for the €100,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And girl, I just went up there and did my thing. That's what it comes down to. I kept the creative juices flowing. I thought to myself, like, this is an opportunity to really bring what I do to a national stage. And it just blew up. And I made it all the way to the finals. So yeah, didn't win, but I knew I wasn't going to win. Like I said, the response was sort of mixed given the public. The public votes for the winner in these shows. And the Got Talent universe is a very unique one. Sometimes a little bit misunderstood by the opera industry, if I'm honest, in my experience. So yeah, it really was quite random.
Oh, you have to remember, we're still talking about people who have TVs and who watch like network television. So that already makes you automatically more conservative, A
little bit, but also not really. M6 in France is quite like Netflix. That's where all of the baking show and all of those, streaming shows are at on M6 Plus. So it's a
plus
M6 Plus. Oui. I'm not going to be, that bitch on Operabox Score being like M6 Plus. En fait, c'est M6 Plus. But yeah, it's quite like, sort of Netflix in Paris. There's a lot of streaming shows that people watch on there. All those like dating shows, 90 Day Fiancé, things like that are on there. So people watch it. Yeah.
Wow. So we are recording on Martin Luther King Day, January 20th, a day when nothing else happened. Just kidding. Today is Inauguration Day. And being a drag artist, what are your concerns for drag artists coming into this new, we'll call it an administration?
We'll call it an administration. I'll save my thoughts about that for another time, but drag...
Offline.
Offline. We can, we'll circle back on that. Drag has been, I always say like drag is under attack. And that's sort of not hyperbole at this point. Drag is definitely under attack in the sense that femininity and feminism is under attack in this moment in time. I'm terrified, quite honestly, about the implications of this administration and what that means for the community. Particularly, queens come in all shapes, sizes, genders, expressions these days. And so us as a community are all linked to drag at this point. And it's quite terrifying. Like, I think moving forward, we need more unity amongst us to fight what's coming. And drag is resistance as well. Drag is a powerful tool to challenge what we see as the norms of gender and performance. And that in and of itself has been consistent through all the times in history that we faced such things as are happening in this country. The sort of onus to protect certain types of art and certain types of performance comes down to drag artists, comes down to queer performers, especially queer performers of color, which I am part of that community. And it sometimes falls on us to be culture carriers and torchbearers to improve and fight for the next generation. So,
I mean, opera is so queer. It always has been. And so it's funny that, like, you know, there's probably these ultra conservative people who want opera to be traditional. But if you really want opera to be traditional, you're actually embracing, you're embracing the drag.
You should be embracing the drag. Girl, like, pants rolls, okay? That's like one part of it. But also, like, men used to disfigure their bodies to accomplish the sound of another gender. Like, our history is entrenched in this, like, absence of real gender norms, right? In the traditional sense. That's the history behind the art form. So how do we divest from that? We can't. We actually cannot. The false sense of security that people have in the sort of more traditional world of opera it's funny, honestly. That's what Creatine Price is actually mostly about, is like poking fun at what everybody thinks is this sort of like, traditional value system. So
I have a friend who is a specialist in the French Baroque repertoire. And, you know, in the French Baroque operas, like the hero, the hunter, whatever, is always like taking a nap. You know, it's like, oh, I feel tired. I'm going to take a nap, you know. And like, it's the idea that in the French Baroque era, like having control of your art, having control of your gesture, having control of your ornaments, all of these graces was masculinity. You know, being able to dance was masculine. And now all those things, like, oh, you sing, oh, you dance, oh, you know, you have gestique when you talk, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's this, like, really, it's very gay. Like, I live, it's, you know, I live for that. But that's our history, you know, and it's still alive today. That's the thing. Like, if you go into any opera company, like, we are so diverse and full of different types of personalities, right? And there's queens everywhere. Like, we're everywhere in opera, you know? And we run opera, like, I mean, like, gay men run opera, like, it's crazy, you know?
Gay white men, you mean?
Gay white men, specifically. I was trying to be a little bit more, you know, hush-hush about it. But, you know, that's the thing, is, like, that's what we encounter all the time, but it's sort of this thing that, like, do opera goers and board members not know? Like,
yeah, who are we kidding, you know?
Who are we kidding? Like, let's stop with the artifice. It's crazy, yeah. So... yeah, but I'm not the only one that's doing this kind of work, you know, like Saphira Cristal, Monet Exchange, you know, these colleagues of mine. Monet and I have known each other for many, many years, and Jasmine Rice LaBeija, right? There's so many.
Oh, you guys have got to create like an opera for just all of you together, you know?
We need like a super group, just a yeah.
Maybe that's in the works, guys. I don't know.
Girls 6 Eva, you know.
When it's time for that breaking news, you let us know.
I'll let you know first. The Opera Box Score will be the first on the hit list for PR. Yeah.
Jordan Pitts, it's been so incredible to speak to you and to share your artistry with our audience. And yeah, we're watching and we're looking forward. And now we call it the OBS bump. Now you've got the OBS bump, and now you'll have tens of new followers.
Of course.
I'm looking forward to welcoming all of them, and all 4 or 5 of them, and truly, it was an honor just to be asked. And I've been a fan of you guys from afar for quite some time, and so thank you so much for making time to have me on here.
E la faccia infarina, la gente paga e ride, vuole cuosarle in vola colombina, ridi Pagliaccio e ognuno applaudirà. Greta Velena Ilka.
You can catch Creatine Price with pianist Mik-Young Kim on September 19th in Buffalo, New York. Meanwhile, Jordan Pitts will be singing Canio in Pagliacci for Buffalo Opera Unlimited, September 26th and 28th. Interesting coincidence that both of these artists are doing gigs in Buffalo. Weird. Okay, let's wrap this show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end each and every one of these shows. My good call, of course, is season 10. Oliver has another good call. He says, good call for anyone who goes to see the operatic camp comedy Gallus, or Galas, like Galas, starring friend of the show Anthony Roth Costanzo as the titular Maria Magdalena Gallus, rhymes with Callis, at Manhattan's Little Island. It opens this weekend. Please tell us all about it. Mailbag@operaboxscore.com. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com, and that's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell, your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Ashley Hardgrave and our guests, Sondra Radvanovsky, Yuval Sharon, and Jordan Pitts, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to lift the veil of mysteriousness that's been shrouded around opera per Sondra Radvanovsky's instructions. We're back with an all-new show next week when conductor and musicologist Will Crutchfield takes a free throw on ornamentation in bel canto opera. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more high-concept frameworks. Join us.